Hey everyone, this is Boom.
And I'm Spice, and this is Boom and Spice Book Advice.
All right, so today we're going to be talking about Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. It's written in 1818. And yeah, we're going to start off here with going over our basic thoughts on the book without any spoilers. And then we're going to get into some spoilers later on, so you'll know when to tune out if you haven't read it and want to.
So, Boom, first and foremost, would you recommend this book? Did you like it?
Overall, definitely. I would definitely read it. I'm glad I read it, and I think there's a lot to gain from picking it up. So, yeah, I guess what were your thoughts? Would you read it?
I agree. I read it. I did my
Yeah,
homework.
I mean, I feel like if we picked it out, we both would read
Exactly.
it.
I kind of procrastinated on it because there's a long section in which we'll get into later, there's not a whole lot of action. It's all setting up future events. So bear in mind, if you're going to read this book, you should probably have time on your hands. If this is a book you want to read, then you should save it for a situation where you're on a flight, maybe on a long car ride. You've got time to sit and read this book.
Yeah, definitely. It's not a super long book. It's not overly too many pages. It's just it gets a little wordy. So and saying that, I feel like we were talking about it'd probably be a better one to audiobook if you have that capability. It's a pretty good listen, in the car when you're not occupied by other things.
My copy of it from Signature Classics from Barnes and Noble is about 200 pages. If you include all of the little prefaces and acknowledgments and everything, it's about 200 pages. So if you're just reading the book, it's more around 150, maybe 170, which doesn't feel like a lot. It's not, but it crams a lot of stuff in its time. It's almost economical in that sense. It could be a whole lot longer than it is, which we'll get into later.
Yeah, no doubt, no doubt.
So the next order of business is boom. If you were in a situation as a student and you had to read this book, is it worth reading in its entirety, or is it worth sparknoting, or somewhere in between?
I think I would probably do the spark, or not do the spark note for this book. I feel like you gain a lot of understanding about the characters in a way that you wouldn't if you're just more familiar with movies and musicals related to it. So yeah, I think I would definitely read the whole thing through. It's not a super long book, and it'd be worth the time to get that understanding.
See, I'm going to differ with you for a second here, where there's so much minutia in this book, especially at the beginning and toward the end, where I feel as though if I was on a time crunch, where I've got assignments coming up, I've got classes going on, I would not want to take the time to read this entire book. However, it is a worthwhile read. If you happen to be a student watching this podcast, listening to it, and you find yourself in a situation where you cannot happen to finish this book, bite the bullet, spark notes it, but come back to it, because there's a lot of interesting character stuff and a lot of interesting philosophical ideas that they touch on.
I think that's a pretty fair point there. I guess I was just kind of thinking of it as what my enjoyment of it, and not kind of encompassing whether it's worth the time if you don't have the time. And I guess with it getting into the weeds and like the words and stuff, sometimes you just kind of want to get that overview. And I feel like if you spark notes it, it's pretty easy to get the overview, or at least what your teachers are going to want you to get for the overview. I think you could probably get there with the spark note pretty quick.
And then would you go physical copy over audiobook? Because you and I started with different formats of this.
Yeah.
And I tried to do the paperback version of this. And I just got bogged down in the opening sections of this book that we'll get into in the spoiler section.
Yep, I'm with you there. I think this one's audiobook all the way.
Absolutely.
That especially if you're not prepared for how that opening is going to be,
Absolutely.
and you open up into that, and it's just kind of like, whoa.
It's really, it's overwhelming. It's overwhelming.
Yep, and it almost was just from listening. I mean, you're just like, whoa, what the hell,
When
man?
are we going to get into the big green guy? Where's he at? I want to see some lightning. So now, into the spoiler section. If you have not read this book, and you intend to in the future, sign out now. It's been nice seeing you. You hit Boom and Spice book advice and have fun reading Mary Shelley's Frankenstein.
All right.
So, Boom, with spoilers included, give me your thoughts on the book in terms of narrative, characters, anything that stood out to you.
Okay, yeah. I think the first and obvious part about when you get into this book is it's almost nothing like what you're going to be expecting if you had just seen
100%.
the movie and the musicals. That was what I was coming from. I've seen 2 versions of the musical. My family, we've been watching the movie forever. And then I get into this, and I'm expecting some green monster with bolts in his head getting revived by lightning, and that's not really the case at all. I feel like the monster was a lot more articulate than I was expecting. Where it's kind of the opposite of the movies and the plays. You get a monster who's articulate and kind in the beginning versus a monster who's just a monster, and they differ in their look. The other one, he ends up getting with that chick who was Frankenstein's mistress, I believe, and then in this one, I mean, you can't even look at the guy without being freaked out.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, he's truly a monster in this version of the book. I absolutely concur in that idea in terms of it is a weird thought that somebody would be able to stomach Frankenstein's monster in the movies. Because in the book, he is so repulsive that there's this set of scenes where he's talking to this old blind man in the hopes of befriending him. And he uses this long, drawn-out analogy of this guy who's not well-liked because he's ugly and nobody wants to befriend him. And he's just trying to convince his friends to like him. And the old man is like, well, we should give him a talking to. And then the monster's like, you are that friend.
Yep.
Please befriend me. I want love. And then his kids come in and kick his ass, despite the fact that he's 8 feet tall.
Yep. And this old man's like, well, yeah, there's no way. Yeah, it's if you're really true of heart, there's no way that they're gonna be mean to you. If you show them who you are, they can get to know you, and there is just no chance. I mean, these guys didn't even think about it. They just see a total monster next to their dad on sight. Attack him.
Oh my god, like a dog on a squirrel.
Fairly poor idea. I mean, 8 foot tall monster with superhuman agility and strength. They're lucky he was so nice at this point.
Truly. This is the turning point, though. This is his villain origin story. Honestly, and if this is Jared Leto, or not Jared Leto, not that guy, the Joaquin Phoenix Joker, this is the point where he puts on the face paint and decides to start killing people. Yep,
he's like, there's no chance. I've been with these people, and then he kind of turns it towards his maker there, and kind of rightfully so. I mean, Frankenstein handles this very, very poorly in the beginning. When he creates this monster, and they get into this philosophical argument later on about, if you're going to create something, you're literally its father, and you turn it away. How do you expect it to turn out?
Exactly. And the guy is truly very afraid of commitment. He prefers to be isolated while doing this weird experiment, and it's shocking that he thought this would go any other way. That he thought he could just imbue something that was at one point inanimate with life and then have it roam around without being lost. without being completely like it's like having a baby, like a big conscious baby, and just dipping immediately. It's like, how do you expect that thing to cope? It lost its only tether in the world
Yeah.
immediately.
Yep. Absolutely. It's got one thing
And it's
that
you.
exactly. It's like its only chance to find out what the world's like. And maybe if he had someone like an introduction guy, someone to be like,
Yeah.
hey, this is a monster. He's going to be way too scary, nightmare, but give him a chance. And if he had someone like that, this old man,
Exactly.
it was a timing thing with the old man, like he's trying to he hear, they're coming back.
Yeah.
So he's like, it's you got to tell him. And then they see a monster agitated by their dad.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
like, oh my God. But if he could have just like done that, and he just gets scared and terrified at his creation and just skips town
Also,
and hopes it doesn't happen. I mean, like
Yeah.
acts like it didn't, it just never happened. There's no monster roaming the streets.
Exactly. I'm gonna get married, monster or not. I'm not even thinking about it. And it's like, you'd think, like, initially your snap reaction to the monster doing this weird act, doing this long drawn out analogy, just to be like, you're that friend, please save me. I'm ugly. It's like he has no social skills. He was not raised. He was just brought into being and expected to exist. And it's honestly, like, it makes total sense. It's like, oh yeah, this guy sucks. This guy.
Oh yeah,
this
when
guy makes no
when they're
sense.
going through that whole monster story, and then when he started to talk to him, you're like, yeah, I mean, it almost turns Frankenstein into the bad guy. Granted, I mean, if you're killing people, I guess there's really no like real excuse. I mean, he's murdering humans, but he wasn't set up for success there, and I feel like that happens with, I mean, actual people. Like if they don't have someone to show them or even care, then what do you expect to do? I mean, he gets spiteful, and goes after him.
Who do you think? Like, obviously, the monster is not a good guy in this book. People sometimes paint him as such because he didn't know any better.
Yeah,
He's just a guy who was brought into being and then left onto his own devices, and this is what he came up with, was to seek revenge. And he was mistreated by the world, and it's like, that's a pretty gross rationale if you're thinking
exactly.
of, like,
Yeah.
real life villains, in terms of people who commit crimes and then justifying that by mistreatment.
Yeah, exactly. Like you get on it, you're on his side there. You're like, man, that really sucks with Frankenstein, but yeah, in the end, I mean, this dude's just murdering people. Like,
Yeah, exactly.
yeah, sorry about your life, but
yeah, it's a shame.
damn, that was a boy you just strangled.
Yeah, that
Like,
was a child who's rightfully afraid. You tried to nap him. You tried to take him away.
yeah. You can't just justify that.
Yeah, it's like, if you're thinking of major, like, killers or criminals in history who committed, vengeful acts and were martyred by some and vilified by others. It's like, you cannot martyr Frankenstein's monster because he doesn't gain anything and you gain nothing from his revenge.
Yeah, he's got no point he's fighting for. I mean, he's just upset.
Yeah.
Mad, evil. I mean, yeah
Yeah,
evil's evil in
yeah.
the end. Like,
and at the end of the book, when he's like, well, I've taken your entire life, you can chase me into, the Arctic wilderness and onto this ice. It's like, he didn't even gain anything from it.
no.
Nobody gained anything from it. And I guess that's not the point when you're an 8-foot tall monster with no social skills, thrust into being and left to wander around. Like, it's shocking that, like, he's certainly not the worst guy in the book, I think, but he's not a good guy.
No, definitely
He's not a good guy.
not a good guy versus bad guy thing in this book. And like, I think the monster knows this at the end of the book. Once Frankenstein's dead, it kind of like everything starts to like hit him a little bit, and that's kind of like the whole like maybe suicide thing he went through at the end, where he's just like, okay, yeah, maybe I shouldn't have killed his whole family and children and stuff. Like,
and innocent
kind of a
wife
yeah, like
precipitated the downfall of his dad. And
yeah, no. And then Frankenstein was killing me in that story. Like, after his last thing with the monster, where he's like creating the wife or his partner, and then destroys it because he's like, this thing has free will. Well, I have no
exactly.
I have no reason to put two of these things in there because I
don't
know.
I'll just have two 8-foot tall
monsters. It might
monsters.
Be more evil than him by nature. Yeah,
they might not be friends.
Yeah, like
for all I know, I'll just have a pissed off 8-foot tall monster here.
It was a short-sighted request on the I get it. He wants companionship, but like, that you can't in good conscience do that if you're Frankenstein. And then, but then after that, the monster's like, I will be there on your wedding night, and this dude like must not have cared that much about his cousin wife. Because he did nothing. Like, he leaves her alone on their wedding night.
Oh, yeah.
After, he's like, I'll be there. Like, I don't know. I feel like Frankenstein, like you were saying with the commitment issue. It's like, all of them. He's got the issues.
And at what point do you decide, all right, time to fess up, talk to people about this. Let's get this monster.
Oh, absolutely.
And nip this in the bud.
Yeah, this monster's 8 feet tall, super strong, but he's not invincible.
Yeah, exactly. He hasn't proven.
It's not like he's a threat to all of mankind.
Yeah, he's not even angry at everybody. He's angry at Victor Frankenstein and the French family that spurned him. That's about it.
That and I mean, he lets people get killed over that. Someone was this girl, like their friend, was hung or killed. Yeah, like.
Yeah, she was convicted for
murder that she totally didn't commit.
And she sounded fine about it after Victor was like, hey, you didn't do it. You didn't do that. And she's like, oh, sweet.
I'm glad that you don't think so, yeah.
Yeah, these two people in my cell who knew me before the crime don't think I committed the crime.
Yeah. Oh, that was really when it starts for Frankenstein, like he's just losing.
Oh, yeah.
All of his credibility as like a decent human. Like, if he had any left, just letting people go like that for your thing.
It's also, he's still like his dad, essentially. And then his son goes, hey, I need a wife to be whole, with this like weird incel logic that he goes into, where the whole world doesn't understand me. I need to move away with a wife where we'll never be seen. And it's like, instead of nipping this terrible idea in the bud, they go, all right, I'll satiate your weird carnal desires.
Yep.
Where it's like, if he'd just gone, hey, there's way more ways to find fulfillment than just having a wife, then maybe like he could find a job or a hobby. Like, I don't know, there's plenty of ways to be fulfilled. Maybe try to become not repulsive and then find a human wife. Not another 8-foot tall, stitched together sack of decomposing flesh. Speaking of which, when he talks about moving away with the wife, you and I have both noticed this one comment that reoccurs over and over, which is the biggest criticism of this book that I have, where Mary Shelley insists that South America is uninhabited.
Oh my god.
She insists.
Oh yeah, several times through this monster. Like, we'll go where no one is. No life. It'll just be us doing our thing.
South America.
South America.
I've come to
never be heard from again from anybody.
Not a peep. I've come to two conclusions, and it's either that Mary Shelley is incredibly ignorant, profoundly ignorant, to the point where she knows all of this geography, yet she does not know that people live on the continent of South America in the year 1819. Like, we've had people in the New World for well over a century.
Long time.
incredibly long time. And there's no excuse. There's no excuse. Which leads to the other idea that she doesn't think of South American
As
people
people.
as people. That's problematic. Don't you agree?
Absolutely.
That's even just saying it. It's oh my god.
Hopefully the former.
But then it's like, how?
But how? Yeah.
How do you manage that? And she's like well traveled, it seems.
Or yeah, maybe just looked like, but it's several times. Like it's
she
it's his
insists.
whole thing. Yeah.
Yeah, it is absolutely
We'll
persistent
go to
throughout
South
the novel.
America. Nobody there.
No one at all.
Just oh my god.
Oh, it's so weird.
But yeah, barring that.
That incredibly weird racism. And then there's this point where after Victor Frankenstein disposes of the corpse that he threw together for the bride and disassembled, he was essentially framed for murder by Frankenstein's monster, and he was found on shore by these Irish fishermen who sounded like a caricature of Irish people,
Yeah.
where they're just angry and belligerent immediately and rude, established as rude
Oh, yeah.
from the jump.
As soon as she mentions Irish people, and then it's from the very first interaction with them. Just
And she kind of subverts it, though, when it's like, oh, we're angry at you not because we're Irish.
yeah, not because we're just angry.
It's because you're a murderer.
Suspected murderer.
Yeah, because
We
you're...
can't expect a kind welcome.
Exactly, yeah. A foreign menace, truly. So that's nice. That or she meant for the caricature to be there, and they happen to be justified.
And then accidentally made it okay.
And it makes all the sense in the world. I mean, Irish people were treated terribly in America at that time. Like, there were signs in windows of places of employment that said Irish need not apply, things of that nature. It's not unbelievable that she'd include hints of racism against Irish people in this novel. Also, that, I just realized, that plot kind of goes against the monster's idea, where he goes, I will see you on your wedding night, but then frames him.
Then he goes to
for
frame
murder.
him for murder.
Yeah,
There will be no wedding.
exactly.
He's trying to
He's
get
in
this guy
jail.
thrown in jail.
Yeah, he might get
Hey,
executed.
maybe commitment issues on the monster's part.
Exactly. He's like, I would be there if there's a wedding.
If there was a wedding to attend,
but I might as
rest
well
assured.
it's
But maybe I'm wrong. We'll just get you arrested.
yeah, exactly. I'm not throwing all my eggs in the wedding basket.
Yeah.
Which ends up being the right basket to throw your eggs in. You shouldn't be throwing eggs in any basket. Just shatter them.
Yeah, not if you're expecting to keep them
not
whole.
if you want those eggs. Unless you're going to dump the basket into like a frying pan or something, or whatever receptacle you're going to cook your eggs in. Yeah, I don't know.
There's
I can
no,
see
you get book advice, you get
you
real
get
world
egg
advice.
You're getting basket advice. You're getting racism advice. All of it.
Yeah, and then did you notice the? I mean, I'm sure, but the little bit of hypocrisy from Frankenstein there in those beginning letters, or just throughout the book with the letters and stuff. After he, he's telling this whole tale of like in the beginning, he's like, "Hey, you better slow your roll with all of your enthusiasm for discovery. That was me when I was young, and look at me now. I'm the most wretched there's ever been.
Yeah.
There's no recourse for me." But then, it starts getting rough, and, like, Walden's crew is, like, facing death. Like, they could die from what's, like, they're thinking about
Right.
turning back. And then Frankenstein's like, you wusses.
Yeah.
Like, there's no glory in turning back. Like, then he starts to go right back into it. Like,
Yeah, exactly.
he's like, you're going to let them turn around?
That's a good point.
That is, like, because he's like, okay, yeah, it's getting pretty bad. I guess we should turn around, like you said in the beginning. And then he's like, wait, hold on a second, you cowards.
Yeah, Victor,
You're just turning around.
You remember the last time you went full bore on something? You created a monster that killed nearly your entire family.
Yeah, then this, yeah, he's taking your advice or trying to.
Exactly.
Call him a coward.
Beat it.
Luckily, didn't they? I think they did end up turning though.
I think they ended their voyage. I think they hit a point where like the ice broke apart. And they're like, yeah, we can get home now. It's like, oh man, well, I've still got my monster, and then he dies.
Yeah, well, I think that's probably what it was. He's like just selfish.
Yeah, he is selfish. That's probably the defining trait.
Yep, and there it comes.
He's like pretty dumb, but he's also selfish. Like, this is a bad idea. Like, I think that's the point. Like a bit of a hubris play where it's like, oh man, me and my, my greed, my hubris, I created life, imbued it with life, and I didn't take care of it. And it's like, that's dumb. That is a dumb thing to do, Victor. That's a bad choice.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's born out of like all these sci-fi movies that borrow from that same idea, where it's like if you don't coddle it and treat it like you ought to, it could turn against you.
Yeah.
And that, you know what, that voyage comment reminds me of the framing device. We haven't gotten into that.
Yeah. That big ass framing device throughout the whole thing. I mean, I don't know. After the conclusion, once it's done, I'm not upset about the framing. I think it was an interesting way to get into it. Yeah, kind of explain it a little better. Caught me off guard, but it's not going to catch you guys off guard, I guess.
And she uses the framing device to fill a plot hole that we both noticed and appreciated.
Absolutely.
Where at the end, once it's explained, like, oh yeah, Victor's talking about all his experiments and stuff, but he decides not to go into how he imbued it with life.
Yep.
In the hopes of it not being repeated. Or, PTSD, maybe something like that.
Yeah, gives a very solid reason on why he wouldn't want to go over it.
There's tons of reasons.
And thank goodness.
Yeah. And now it saves Mary Shelley from looking silly by trying to invent the way to imbue a corpse with life.
The entire science of reanimation.
Exactly.
just figure it out.
And it reminds me, Boom and I were talking off the record, on the side, and it reminded me, like, she made the monster giant for some reason. Like, again, in the sense that it's a monster, but I don't know how you make. She brings up over and over again that's proportionate. It's proportionate. It's not a beanstalk. It's a proportionate human being that happens to be 8 feet tall. And the question is, why would you do that if you're Victor Frankenstein?
No clue.
Mary's like, oh yeah, it's bigger, so it's easier. And it's like, that's just not it. That's just more stuff.
Yep, and that's, I just, like, reading through, I'm like, okay, yeah. And then he mentions this, earlier, and I'm like, yeah, like, that's not how that works. That's not anatomy. He's using human parts. They're the same size, no matter what.
Exactly.
Making it bigger just makes more of it.
Yeah, I don't know why you do that. I would start with, like, a little, like, 4 foot tall yellow.
Yeah,
like,
if he's a monster, so what? He's 4 foot tall.
Yeah, and then when you're like, oh no, I've got a monster roaming around, it would be 4 foot
just
tall.
Just put him in a cage.
Exactly, you can just shove it.
Just tie him up, yeah.
Like, kick it. Like, I feel like he'd be smaller than the boy he tried to
manage. Much more manageable. Maybe strong, whatever, but it's 4 feet tall. Be 4 foot tall.
Strength, yeah.
Have his friend there, and that's probably the true protagonist, his buddy.
It's kind of like, would you rather fight like 50 duck-sized Frankenstein's monsters, or one Frankenstein's monsters-sized duck? That's the big question. I'm definitely going with the tiny Frankenstein's monsters.
Yeah, no question.
Which is how Victor should have thought about it. Because now he can't stop this giant man who's going to spoil his wedding.
Yeah, there you go. If you're thinking about reanimation, make him small.
Yeah, make him a little guy.
Yeah,
it's kind of like
common sense.
When people were sending animals into space, they didn't start with like elephants. They started with, like rats and dogs, little guys, like cats and stuff. It did not start with giant beings because they knew, man, this isn't making it more accurate or something.
No.
This is just making it far more difficult. Oh, man. Imagine, like, they start with, like, Laika, like the dogs they send up into space.
Yeah.
Or, like, maybe Ham the chimp. There's, like, a couple of them. And then it's just, like horse into space.
horse into space.
Horse into space. Just right away. That's what Victor Frankenstein did. Yeah, instead of nickel and diming his way up, he just shot a horse into space.
Yep.
He almost did it
8 foot tall.
again. He came shockingly
He came
close.
real close.
Oh, super
on
close.
the table,
He
almost made.
Yeah, he just about made it. And then he's like, wait, this might be a bad idea. And I think it's noteworthy that Mary Shelley, being a woman, as it were, as she is or was, is acknowledging a woman's autonomy in this book, despite it being 1819 when this is written.
Definitely.
That she does not immediately assume that this giant monster woman would be subservient to her giant monster spouse.
No, and if anything, they're worried about it being more of the same, or even to a greater extent troublesome.
Well, yeah,
not at all just following the lead, and that was the problem. Yeah, that's the problem he had.
Exactly.
If it was just going to be whatever, he'll do it. She's going to listen and follow the first Monsters League.
Yeah,
no big whoop.
Yeah, 2 questions there.
Yeah, he's like, wait a minute, it's
Yeah,
going to be worse.
Yeah, that's actually a smart moment by both Shelley, absolutely, and to a lesser extent, Victor Frankenstein, where they go, there's the 2 main questions you need to tackle. Is Mrs. Frankenstein's monster going to be kind? Is she going to be criminal? Or, on the same token, is she going to be the love interest I need for my monster?
Mm-hmm.
And Victor could have really nipped this in the bud if he just went and said, hey, I can't promise you a spouse, but I can promise you, like, a love interest. Like someone you could at the very least spit game to. Someone who's also 8 feet tall and reanimated. What if she ended up gay?
Well, that's just it, and that's what he got in.
Lesbian.
Yeah.
Like, how many monsters does he have to make at that point?
And that's what he got into with like the attitude and not wanting to make it, because
Exactly.
it's you don't know what its nature would be. You ended up you totally jacked up the first one. You had one that was like extremely good natured in the beginning.
He's not even a bad person.
Like
just a
very
guy.
nice, articulate guy, overcome by his harsh experience.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of like a Hamlet situation. That guy wasn't killing people before, his dad was killed and his uncle married his mom.
No, and it was like, I mean, at the very beginning, like when he's talking about his like just his very first experience in life. I mean, like this is a 8 foot tall monster getting, like loving to hear birds chirp. It's like loves nature and small animals. Like that's his bare bones nature is nice and sweet and caring.
He didn't hurt the blind old man.
No.
And he could.
And he didn't hurt those people as they kicked his ass for nothing. He could have killed everyone there.
Absolutely.
And just took it, sad. It was, because I guess at that point it hadn't had time to simmer and boil into hatred. It was more just like soul-crushing sadness and despair.
I think Mary Shelley dropped the ball by not doing a similar trick with how we learned language to how reanimation happens. Because she goes and she's like, yeah, I learned French from the people. I just listened to them and I learned French. And it's like, no way did this monster learn French just through conversation. It's just not going to happen.
No, just listening to people, like, no way.
And they're not even talking to him. He's just eavesdropping. Oh my god! Like it would have been better unexplained.
Yeah, no, and I guess he's there a while, but like, I could listen to 2 people talking in a language and not know anything.
Not at all. Yeah, They could be talking about something totally alien to what I
yeah, for as long as I wanted to observe them, and I wouldn't get anything from it.
Absolutely. You could make up a language. Like, you could physically make up a language that sounds foreign to me, and I could be like, all right, I feel like I'm picking up something. Like, it's just not accurate at all. Which, I mean, that's not what you go to Frankenstein for. If you're going to Frankenstein for linguistic or scientific accuracy, you're barking up the wrong tree. I mean, she doesn't confuse it for that. Like, who am I thinking of? Jules Verne, where he goes to great lengths to explain the science in his books.
Yep, we talked about that.
Yep, the faux science that he makes, and it bogs it down.
Mm-hmm.
And if he'd just gone the Mary Shelley route, and maybe said, blueprints were destroyed or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Do you really gain a whole bunch of understanding about that science that doesn't exist through listening to it? Does it enhance your reading that much? And I mean, I don't think I would have gained anything from learning exactly all of the science for half a book's length.
Phony
on
science.
How this works. Yeah, science that isn't real. This is maybe if reanimation was real, and then I mean it'd be worth it. I'd be very interested. Yeah. But this isn't science. It's not real at all.
She doesn't even pretend it is.
No. Very thankful.
Yeah, very useful. I'm very fortunate that she decided not to go that route. I don't think we fleshed out what the framing device is. There's this guy who's on a ship. He's the captain of a ship who's exchanging letters with his sister.
Yep.
I believe.
Yep.
Yes.
His
sister Elizabeth. And he encounters Victor Frankenstein in the midst of chasing the monster. And Victor is initially comatose, which is a trope in this book, where people go in and out of fevers and comas and just come back.
Certainly.
Another hallmark.
Victor, especially. This guy, he's a mess the whole time.
Constant. So, eventually, once he warms up and, gets food in him and everything, he decides to regale the captain with his history of reanimating corpses and dealing with their vengeance. And it's used as a way, like, you are listening to the captain talk to his sister about a guy who's talking about these events.
Yep. Frankenstein's telling him the story during the day. He says he's writing it down as closely as he can remember it every night.
Which is shocking.
In his letter, which is amazing. He's very, very good listener.
There must have been stuff he lost. What do you think got omitted?
Incredible listener he must have been. Good God.
Yeah, Elizabeth is a very lucky person to have a guy so receptive.
Like that whole monologue from the monster.
Oh, yeah.
There's
a point in time, like, if you're solving this like PEMDAS, like a math problem, you start with the captain, and you go in, there's Victor, who's then quoting the monster, who I think at one point quotes someone else within it. Yeah, he quotes the sons of the guy who's blind. So there's a point in time where you're quoting a guy who's quoting a guy, who's quoting a monster, who's quoting some sons.
Yeah, and he just remembers it, throws it on the page.
Oh, yeah.
Who's talking when.
Shocking accuracy.
Pretty good.
And the monster is very articulate, which is odd for, being taught.
The way he learned his language,
by happenstance.
His mastery of it is pretty crazy.
Incredibly fluent. At most, he should be functionally illiterate. Like a guy who just knows enough.
Like the movie. Like, when you watch the movie, the guy, he learns a couple words. He can say a few things, but that hardly means it.
Yeah.
This guy, he's a smart fellow.
Oh, man. He just happens to be the ugliest man alive and 8 feet tall. And he's super athletic. They don't acknowledge this in the movies. He walks like a zombie. But in the books, he is the fastest.
Scales mountains easily.
Yeah, like a superhero.
Can survive in any conditions.
he seemingly
insane.
never sleeps. Like, it's just he's an animal. I don't know what. He's kind of like Shrek. It's more akin to that, where he's like an athletic guy. You see him running around the castle and everything. Yeah, he's not like a zombie. People paint him as a zombie, and he's just not. Which doesn't make a whole lot of sense, considering in a literal sense he's a zombie.
Yeah, definitely a zombie.
I wonder, like, if you were to do this, because clearly his consciousness is not, like, the brain is from a person who existed and died, but has since become, like, infantile, I guess.
Yeah,
Now that
like
he's,
all the
he's been
synapses are gone.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know how that works. And at one point, like a Ships of Theseus situation, where, like, you know, that parable where if you take everything out of a boat, like do you have a new boat? Strip it of the floorboards and the masts and everything. At what point does it become a new boat, even though it's got the same name? What if you were to take somebody who I guess has to be 8 feet tall, because we're Victor Frankenstein, take them apart after they die, stitch them back together, and imbue them with life the same way that Victor did? Would they retain their memories?
Is it still the same guy?
Yeah, the same
new guy,
because the brain is the same. It's not like you carry thoughts in your heart. Like
I guess it's interesting. Yeah, because I don't know. I guess I just don't know what happens to your brain when you die. I mean, what happens to your memories, at least.
Yeah.
Interesting. I mean, yeah.
There's also a thought. Like there's some logistical things I'd like to talk to Mary about if she has the chance. Send her some fan mail or something. Where, like, they talk about in Victor's thoughts on having a second monster. Where it's like, oh, if they have kids, and then suddenly there's a race of monsters. Like, you know, what am I thinking of in terms of when a donkey and a horse have kids?
Oh,
is it a mule or is it?
I know what you mean.
Yeah.
Is it a mule?
I'm trying to think of
a donkey. I think it's a mule. I don't know. I know what you mean though, because they're
or
infertile.
A liger.
Liger, same deal.
Yeah, a liger, where they could have kids. A lion
together
and a tiger,
they can have a kid,
but
that
a liger cannot
can't
have
kids.
kids with another liger or anything else. I wonder if that would be the case with the Steins, the
Steins,
the monster family.
Yeah,
where it's like
Frankenstein monsters.
Yeah, genetically they're just a bunch of different people stitched together. But then presumably,
that too, I wonder how those genetics would even, what kind of crazy thing would happen if they.
And also, they've got presumably they did not like piece together reproductive organs from several different people. In the same way that you kind of assume, you know, an arm is an arm, a leg is a leg. Like, it's not a bunch of different people's stuff put together. And then it's like, I don't know how that thing would reproduce.
No,
I don't think it would.
have no idea. I don't think he had to worry about that. But maybe.
Eventually he didn't have to when he tore it
then
apart.
As he's watching.
Threw it in the river.
See, that's the word. I wish he would have just said no. I mean, I guess he didn't have a choice, though. They're sitting there talking about it. He's like, I won't hear you. The monster's like, guy, I'm 8 foot tall, super strong, agile. You're going to hear me. You don't have that choice.
Oh, man. Yeah, this is a really interesting book. This is, above all else, while I'd say it's good, and I think it's worth your time in terms of its sheer quality, it's just an interesting book. That's first and foremost.
Yep.
It raises a lot of interesting existential questions.
Yeah, there's a lot of themes on there we haven't even tried to touch on yet. I mean, like, the book in the original, like, copy of the book, it's Frankenstein, the modern Prometheus or whatever. I guess it's not so modern anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
But that's kind of interesting too. I mean,
Prometheus, the guy that stole fire. And
stole fire to try to give it to the humans. Zeus was pissed about that. He strung him up and had a bird pick out his liver every single day. Overnight, it would regenerate.
Like a Sisyphus
do it again.
Situation.
Yeah. Yep.
Which presumably she's talking about
Frankenstein,
Victor Frankenstein,
reanimation,
not the monster,
giving life, trying to introduce this whole thing. Because at first, I mean, he's a visionary. He's changing science. Everyone thinks he's crazy, but he's trying to give fire to these ignorant people.
And it's just like Prometheus. It's pretty short-sighted. It's not a great idea.
Yeah.
I wonder if she ever considered the idea that Frankenstein and Frankenstein's monster would become misnomers for each other. Where you can just go, like, Frankenstein, and you think of the monster.
Hard to say, because that's absolutely the thing. I mean,
she refers to him as, like, the Fiend, oftentimes.
Yeah, never got a name.
Never got
this monster.
Which also plays into the ideas, like, the themes of identity within it.
Yep.
Yeah, he's nameless. He's nameless. He's identityless. Just rudderless, going through the world with no tether to anybody or anything. It's sort of reminiscent of our next book with To Kill a Mockingbird, where there's a character. Boom is yet to read it. I've read it in the past. But I've spent some time.
I've been doing my best to not try to get too into looking at it. I want to go in with like new eyes or ears.
Well,
into that, but I'm
for
this
I won't
case,
spoil
whatever.
Anything clearly because we've yet to record that podcast, but it's kind of interesting how it works out that book also has a significant amount of time spent covering the themes of identity and how they work in society. So they're not one-to-one, but I feel like there's some parallels that could be drawn between the two pieces. And I'm excited to get into that. So, as we're beginning to wrap up, Boom, give me your final thoughts on Frankenstein, Mary Shelley, book as a whole, your recommendations.
All right, yeah, some final thoughts. So, yeah, like we've been saying, I enjoyed it. I thought it was a good read. Listen, rather. Mary Shelley, like we said, little couple troublesome areas, perhaps. Perhaps. But overall, I mean, considering, like, she's 18, 19 as she's writing this, pretty impressive use of where I guess that was kind of, at that time, people are a little more wordy than us. But, like, to be able to create this, I mean, like, this is considered by a lot to be one of the first true works of, like, sci-fi. It's inspired, like, tons of stuff. So that's it's pretty crazy. I guess they came up with this on some trip or something. Just they had like a novel writing contest because that's what the youth did in 1818.
Yeah, she had the time, man. She had the time and the dedication.
Yeah. So I mean, yeah. Overall, I mean, that's impressive in itself. How young and then how pretty good it is for being like that.
Exactly. It's aged pretty well outside of the racism. In terms of like sex politics, it's pretty. It's aged really well.
Absolutely, fairly progressive in that sense.
Oh, I forgot. There's some weird incest undertones throughout.
Oh yeah, all
over the place, which is an 1800s classic.
Yeah, at that point, yeah, that's why I guess we didn't bring it up so much.
Somebody like Poe, like it's all over the place.
Yep. It's as Walden,
common as grass.
Yep.
It's just
interested in his cousin, married his cousin. I mean, that's par for the course at that time.
Yeah, that's just how it is. And that was before Darwin ended up figuring out that having people from the same gene pool, having kids, is a bad choice.
Yeah.
Final thoughts in terms of who you would recommend this for? What groups? What interest areas?
Yeah, that's a good question. For me, I guess my normal kind of genre I'm reading is sci-fi fantasy kind of thing, and I feel like it's a pretty refreshing thing for that. Like if you're looking for something a little bit outside of your regular comfort zone, I'm a big Lord of the Rings kind of guy. So this is still staying in that kind of sci-fi fantasy realm, but totally different view.
to sci-fi.
Yep.
Yeah, it's-
Totally different view. Good. It's a good kind of refresher. I was getting a little bit bogged down in those big, long reading fantasy books, and reading a short but thought-provoking sci-fi was kind of nice. So yeah, I guess.
Yeah,
What do you think?
my favorite genre is I like these like paperback little 200-page to 300-page books that cover existential themes. Like if anyone listening's familiar with Albert Camus or Nietzsche to a certain extent, like short stories like Raymond Carver, all that, and the fact that Frankenstein touches on such interesting existential themes kept me roped in. Because while I can get down with some Ray Bradbury, I can get down with some like Isaac Asimov, I really, in my wheelhouse, is stuff that's short, it's concise, touches on very interesting topics. And this certainly does that in spades.
Absolutely. Checks all the marks there.
So if you're someone with time to kill, if you're someone on the brink of a major trip, if you're someone who enjoys things with existential themes or themes around science or science fiction, future science, give this a listen or give this a read, because this book is totally worth your time.
All right.
All right.
I think there we go.
Yeah, that was some good boom and spice book advice.
Yeah.
Please
Pilot.
join us for the next episode where we'll cover Harper Lee's To Kill a Mockingbird. Until next time, I've been Spice.
This is Boom, and we'll see you next time.
You just got advice.